Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be here today. We are excited to bring to you an incredible speaker through our Manatee Connects series. I am Veronica Thames, the CEO of Manatee Community Foundation. And housekeeping up front, this meeting is being recorded. This is a very timely topic, and we know we will want to share it with the rest of our nonprofit partners. Let me share a bit about MCF, where we partner with our citizens to strengthen and enhance our community through philanthropy, education, and service now and forever. We're here in perpetuity to support you in our community. We are about 27 years old this year and are grateful to say we've been able to gift to our community over $66 million in community grants or scholarships in partnership with our donors. And as the only community foundation in Manatee that serves the entire county, we have a huge responsibility and privilege to get to partner with you to make our community a better place. I want to thank you again for taking the time to invest in the success of your nonprofit organization. Today's presentation, as I said, comes in very timely as we experience a new administration take office and issue legislation with the potential of greatly impacting the nonprofit organizations that make our community a better place. We know that the services that each one of your organizations provides to our community are in many other areas of the country, provided by the government, perhaps not as with the same expertise, funding and dedication and local partnerships as you do. So it's in everyone's best interest that we learn how to advocate for our organizations, not only for funding, but for political support and for other resources that may contribute to our success. So today will be a bit interactive. Please use the chat feature to submit questions. We have Simone and the rest of our team who will help usher those to our presenter and make sure that they get answered. And then please also help me thank the team at MCF, Simone Peterson, Yolanda Mancha, Max Schmitz, Fallon Markwell, Sarah Bostic, and Alicia Chalmers for helping put programs like Manatee together, Manatee Connects together for the greater good of our community. After this event, we'll follow up with an email and we'll contain both a survey so we can learn more about what means the most to you and the experience you had, as well as ideas on what we could offer in the future. So please take a minute. It is very, very short and share your feedback. And stay tuned for other capacity building opportunities. You can learn about those via our newsletter. So if you're not receiving it, please let us know via this chat and we'll make sure you're added. And the next up is tonight, where Robin Fossey will talk about establishing nonprofits and the governance functions and other duties and responsibilities of nonprofits. So stay tuned for future offerings as well. And now let me introduce Holly Bullard, who I've known for a few years and is an incredible person, superstar. And we are lucky to have her locally. She is in Sarasota. So she has gifted a lot of time to our nonprofit partners, and she dives deep into delves into the public policy space. As Chief Strategy and Development Officer, Holly spearheads FPI's Florida Policy Institute's fundraising, policy advocacy, coalition building, outreach, and communications strategies. Holly previously served as the Senior Director of Financial Stability Initiatives at United Way Suncoast, where she oversaw financial stability programs in the Tampa Bay and Sarasota Manatee area. So she's very familiar with our region. She also served at United Way in a policy and advocacy capacity. Prior to joining United Way Suncoast, Holly worked as legislative aide to Congressman Ruben Hinojosa, a senior member of the powerful House Financial Services Committee and chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Holly has a master's in public policy from Georgetown University and a bachelor's degree in political science from Emory University. And in 2021, she was named Emory University's 40 under 40 of distinguished alumni. She's a proudly a proud product of the Pinellas County Public Schools and a daughter of Florida public educators. So she is extremely familiar with the challenges of today in our community. So thank you again so much for joining us. And Holly, I'll pass the baton on to you.
Great, thanks, Veronica. I appreciate that lovely introduction. And so I'm Holly Bullard. I'm Chief Strategy and Development Officer at Florida Policy Institute. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen and I get started. But before that, I did want to kind of level set a little bit, is that, you know, there's a lot going on at the moment. And so when we're talking about public policy and impacting that, I want to give us a little bit of grace about like learning and understanding and trying to really think about what's best for all of our organizations and communities. That it's so much going on right now that, you know, we're not going to be able to go over everything in an hour. I am local. I am going to share my information. If there's anything that you'd ever want to touch base with me or FPI, or we could probably figure out somebody that can assist as well. So I wanted to throw that out, and we're going to give a couple of resources for other organizations that are really great that we rely on, so that because there will be more questions, and there's just so much going on right now that you're never going to answer all of it in an hour. So I wanted to just preface it with that. And so, but lovely to meet all of you and to be in communication with you today and in the community. Let's see here. All right, again, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is a little bit about Florida Policy Institute. If you haven't heard of us before, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank in Florida that we work a lot on education and social wellness issues, child well-being, and that's our team right there, lovely team. I am local, but we're really statewide, and so you have someone, probably a policy analyst, who knows something about a policy that you might have an interest in. So check out our website and our information. And this is how we operate. This is really our theory of change, where we conduct high quality, credible research. We also analyze public policy proposals and look at the impacts of proposals. We also develop policy recommendations. We educate policymakers, work with the public, and engage the media. And then we also really key, we focus on partnerships. That's really the core of who we are. And so we're always looking for new partners and to support and to engage with. And then finally, we advocate for smart public policies that improve well-being and economic opportunity in Florida. We do all of this in these 4 broad buckets of work. We call this our roadmap for shared prosperity in Florida. So if you're ever wondering what does Florida Policy Institute do, we do work in lots of different issues. They will fall in these 4 areas of really investments. We are a fiscal policy organization at heart, meaning like we analyze the budget. We're going to look at the fiscal impacts and what impacts on our communities different budget choices will make. And definitely at the federal level as well, and in Florida to look at that, but especially in the state, we have expertise on state policy and the state budget. And all with an eye to foster community well-being by investing in education and health, spurring sustainable growth by promoting equitable economic development, smart infrastructure and improving climate resilience, advancing shared prosperity by nurturing inclusive communities and building a strong safety net, and then cleaning up and modernizing our tax code for a stronger future is sort of how you piece this all together. So it's a little bit about FPI. So I looked back I have this presentation that I've given a couple times, and in this moment, I actually wanted to take a little bit of a different tack at the beginning and sort of reset about sort of our voice and nonprofits and who are we in the world right now in terms of advocacy. There's a lot of I say hesitance or fear or there's confusion about, what people can do, what we should do. So I like to kind of reset with things like this and this very powerful poem that many in the social impact world lean back on, and who will join the standing up, and the ones who stood without sweet company will sing and sing back into the mountains, and if necessary, even under the sea. We are the ones we have been waiting for. I'm always fascinated by some of these stories and poems that really lean on us as being who we're waiting for, and the leadership and the voice, right? So I come back to that with nonprofits, often they'll say, oh, that's someone else's realm. Policy advocacy or policy education or lobbying is scary, and that's someone else's job. And my message, really, probably Veronica knows this, but my message really to everyone is that it is absolutely legal that you can lobby, that you can completely advocate and educate and lift up the voice, and that nobody else knows more than you do what is impacting your community and how it's impacting your community, and the voice of either the folks that you directly are involved with, or maybe your staff, that you are the experts. And if you don't speak up and allow that voice to influence and to shape the narrative, then who else will, right? If not for us. So I like to kind of reset on this a little bit more about, if we can, then we should. And that is our duty as nonprofits and work. And that's it's sometimes easier than it sounds, especially if you can just do something small at first, that your voice is really important in this space. So we are all welcome, and we are all called to this moment to share our voice and the voice of our communities. So policy advocacy, lobbying, impacting public policy, whether at the local, the state, the federal level. Often what I know from personal experience at nonprofits in the public policy space, engaging with them, with foundations who can also advocate, to throw that out there, that it's really important to circle back to your mission and vision, and really be clear-headed and clear-eyed about how one would achieve that vision and mission outside of any sort of policy impacts, or right, that policy environment drives so much of what is happening with our children, whether it's they get enough to eat, whether they get the education they need to thrive, if our neighbors here can build and to have a thriving life in the future with the climate shifting and impacts for that, right? Like the sliver and the support of our work for nonprofits is only one piece of the puzzle. And so wanting to constantly come back to start with your why, of why are we doing this, and how does the policy landscape impact, just like starting with that. And just to be honest with the mission and vision of where does that look like, and to have those conversations, whether if you are leadership, to have conversations with your board, if you're on staff, even if it's just bubbling up, like, how does this impact, how do these decisions impact our vision and mission? Do you have a theory of change? Does it reflect that? Is it time to reimagine a theory of change, especially in 2025, and thinking about the impacts of changing tides at the federal level, as Veronica said, and locally, right? Like what are those impacts, right? Just being very honest with yourselves and to have a conversation with and boards are having this conversation all over the nation, right? Of saying, what does this mean for us now? And then what are your long-term objectives? And how does public policy impact them? An easy example would be when I was at United Way, one of the programs, and I'm a United Wayer at heart. I love United Way and the VITA program, which is a tax preparation program. But at heart, that tax preparation program was all about connecting individuals to free tax prep and to some tax credits that people didn't know existed and that they should be that they qualified for. So thousands of dollars that a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't know I qualified for that. But then big picture, it's also about protecting those tax credits, right? So if those tax credits disappear, then what is the impact of your program? And that's something that, United Ways I know have been engaged in, but that's really stepping back and thinking about the objectives and your theory of change and your mission first before stepping out into the next steps of public policy and advocacy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about different words. So educate, advocate, and yes, lobby. So especially this word lobby. Okay, so when in the nonprofit space or boards, and I've heard it's like, oh, we advocate and we don't lobby though, because we're not allowed to lobby. If you garner anything or learn anything from today, just know that the IRS and state law says that you can lobby. And so anyone who says that we can't lobby, well, that is actually incorrect in terms of the law. If folks are saying something like, well, we've chosen not to lobby as a tactic because of reasons, then okay, but I do not accept when folks say, oh, you can't lobby because you're a nonprofit. That is wrong on its face. And honestly, it's harmful because if that narrative gets out there that you can't lobby, then those voices that are sometimes the most critical and welcome in many discussions about how policy impacts individuals in our communities, it is a chilling effect. So I want to throw that out there that if there's anyone who says, oh, we can't lobby because we're a nonprofit, that is on its face incorrect. And it came from somewhere, really. It came from probably a discomfort with the idea of it. All right. So let's talk about these words for a second. Lobby has an actual definition per the IRS, right? There are definitions. You can do direct lobby and grassroots lobby. There are actually definitions from the IRS. There are also some guidelines at the state level. They're a little bit less, they're very similar. So lobbying is really, are you talking to your legislator and asking them to take an actual policy action, passing a bill, supporting a very specific policy, right? And then grassroots is asking your community to call your legislators or to call a lawmaker, a decision maker in the policy realm to take a very specific action. Those activities, lobbying, also hiring a lobbyist and someone who does it on your behalf, those are all in the same bucket. Lobbying. Those are things that nonprofits can, and I say should, but they can do for the IRS, and thousands upon thousands do. And because they see it as part of their mission and integral to changing and achieving their theory of change, right? That is critical to that. So the word lobby, I just want to say it should not be a dirty word. It should not be something that people hesitate to talk about, but that it does need a context. If there are some conversations that sometimes it's a little bit, I don't know if I feel comfortable talking about a lobby in this discussion. Just knowing that with your board and with your leadership, that with your donors, understanding that the definitions is really important. And so first and foremost, familiarizing yourself with that and with what nonprofits can legally do under the law, that you are protected and you do things under the law. And so you can lobby. This is the number one lesson for today is you can lobby. But then there's advocate and educate, right? You can do things like advocate for child well-being, right? So I'll throw in a pitch that tomorrow we're going to put out our child well-being index from Florida Policy Institute. We are the Kids Count affiliate for Florida for the Manatee Foundation. Nationally, there are these child well-being index and Kids Count across the nation, looking at different realms of metrics for children. And there's Sarasota, there's Manatee. We look at county by county and to share how are children doing in these different spheres of economic well-being, health. And so advocating can be literally, our children are seeing whether it's drops in literacy scores that are very concerning, right? Just saying, we're very concerned about this. We want something to be done, and talking to lawmakers. If you're not asking for a specific policy change, that's not lobbying, it's advocating. It's broader, right? So if you're advocating for children, you can say, we need to bring people together and discuss the importance of this. None of that falls into the lobbying category, which you can do, you just need to keep track of, and there are limits on it. Lastly, educating, something that FPI does every day of our job is to advocate. We can educate about the impacts of a policy proposal all day, every day. Good example would be FPI recently put out some pieces about the impacts of a state proposal that we personally disagree with, which would essentially take away in-state tuition for Florida's Dreamer students. We've looked at the fiscal impact of that and other impacts in terms of our community, and just research and facts and sharing that is educating, and that is not lobbying. Okay, so there are these different tactics that don't fall into the lobby bucket. And so wanting everyone to think about what makes sense for our organization, and what are some different things that we can do, but to familiarize yourself with the definitions and what you can do under the law for lobby. But lobby is not a dirty word, and it's something that everyone should at least consider and think about if it makes sense for you or for maybe a coalition that you all are a part of. Okay, this is where it gets like this is my my very nerdy tax nerd. I told you guys I like the tax stuff, so this is my tax nerd portion of this morning. You're going to learn one other thing other than you can lobby, and I think you should lobby, but you can. And what does that mean? How would you go about that? There's something called the H election. The H election, and there's an organization called Bullard Advocacy. I'll share a little bit more if you're not familiar with them. Fabulous resource. The H election is the easiest tax form. You will, if you choose to do so, if your organization chooses to take the H election, the easiest tax form you will ever fill out is literally your address, the name of your organization, and yes, I choose the H, and then you send it to the IRS. You do not need an accountant. You don't need you can definitely use that, and you can leverage your counsel or your accountants, but it is very simple, and even the smallest nonprofit can do it. The value of an H election is that it gives you guidelines so that if there are any questions about, well, are we lobbying too much? Is this more than allowed by the IRS? If you don't choose the H election, it's a little bit amorphous, to be honest. They're just saying don't do it in any substantial way, and as long as you don't lobby in any substantial way, then it's okay. But guess what? If you really want that certainty, and if you're going to kind of dive into this world or explore this, there's really no reason not to select the H election, and it's very valuable because it gives you guidelines that you can say, you know what, we absolutely 100% know that we are within the guidelines of that for the IRS of lobbying, right? And they're fairly generous, especially if you think about like some of the tactics that maybe you're already doing. You go, well, can we go to Tallahassee and talk to our legislators about a bill that we care about for, let's say, childcare, right? Let's say we want more funding for our childcare system in Florida, something that FPI cares about too. But let's just pretend that that's what we're doing. Can we drive to Tallahassee and spend money on that? Can we spend a portion of our staff's time to go? Can we print out things? Can we spend time and effort to do this? If you were to add all of that up and you go, oh, generously saying that's $25,000 of a small nonprofit's time of staff time, printing, travel. When you look at the guidelines, you'll feel more comfortable about it and to say, oh, absolutely, we can do that. Okay. A lot of organizations, if you have a larger budget, you're going to be in the $1 million cap range. So there's these ranges of amounts of dollars that you can spend on lobbying. But if you're a nonprofit with a larger budget, there is $1 million cap. But it's $1 million. So I want to step back for a second, and this is the nerdiest slide that I have of the tax stuff. H election, I want you to know what it is, and that if you consider it and think of it as a tool that can help assuage any concern. And that's something that we all need right now, right? So this is an area of interest for you all. The H election is an important tool. It is the easiest tax form you would ever fill out. And so I just want to emphasize this, that it is fairly generous to a lot of folks. So that you could travel, you could hire a lobbyist, you could spend dollars on direct to the community and say, hey, can you guys call our legislator here and ask him very nicely to invest more in childcare? That's called grassroots lobbying. So the last thing I'll say is that there is a formula, and Boulder Advocacy, putting in a plug for them. You Google Boulder Advocacy and we'll share links. They have a nice calculator that you can also throw in your budget and to understand the limits. Put in your budget, and then it'll tell you how much in dollars you have a limit for direct lobby. Again, direct is just, are you talking directly to the lawmaker? And then grassroots lobby, which is you're talking to the community to try to get them to talk. Grassroots lobby has a lower limit, but it's still generous. And if it's a tool in your toolbox that you're not using for your mission and for your impacts, why not? And it's there. And so at least understanding the power of your toolbox, right? And the tools there. Okay. Boulder Advocacy has a 800 number and they have free lawyers. If you're ever concerned, if you're very small and you're like, Holly, I don't have a lawyer. H election and leveraging Boulder Advocacy's tools and resources, and they will call you back. They have lawyers that are free that'll call you back and talk to you about your situation. Go, oh yeah, that's direct lobby. You capture it like this, you track it, and then you do report it on your 990. All right, so you do report lobbying on your 990. It's really easy. I'm very nosy. I look at people's 990s and I can tell if people lobby, right? To say like, oh, or if they're engaged in policy, et cetera. So, or if they don't. So that's, if you're taking anything away today, that you can lobby, and there's something called the H election that's very helpful. Okay, so I probably don't need to convince a lot of folks in the Zoom room today about the value of this, of engaging in policy work. It's probably just overwhelming right now and a little scary. But there are always times when we talk to, whether it's funders or maybe a board chair who's a little skeptical, or maybe a really big donor who's saying, well, you know what, I give money to you guys in order to give books, right? Or engage in volunteer tutoring. Why are you talking to the legislators? Why are you doing this? What's the point of this? So sometimes I like to put on the hat of, return on investment and thinking big picture and how to share this as well. And that's just a very compelling reason for some folks about investing in discrete public policy engagement, and that is the return on investment of it. All right, so you could spend a small portion of your staff time or the travel or communications amount, and you track that. You'd spend that, and then you can have a really big ROI with a win, right? Or even a win being building relationships with your local legislators, or building relationships with even the county commissioners, et cetera. So this is an example I use that a couple of years ago in 2021, years ago now, 2021, there was a program that it was called the Pandemic EBT program, food assistance for the summer for children. And Florida was actually the very last state not to opt into it. So everyone else had opted in, and our governor and the administration hadn't indicated that we would yet. And that was $820 million on the line. Actually turned out to be over $1 billion, I have to say. So $1 billion was on the line for kids for summer feeding. And I want to just step back and to say, like, who among us that was a funder or a donor who can just say, yeah, here's $1 billion for Florida's kids for summer feeding. It's $1 billion. All right. So if we're talking to, business folks or just those individuals who care about impact and are kind of consistently saying, what's the impact of this? This is another framework to use, and to say, well, you can manage risk and you can manage everything around it, and thinking about your voice and your lane and everything, but that the ROI potential is so high that it behooves you to explore this as a strategy. So dozens of our groups got together. We worked with the media. We worked with, a policy institute like FPI identified it as an opportunity. But we worked with the food banks. We worked with food group, child advocacy groups, etc. Just many other groups coming together, getting some letters and engaging in grassroots and direct advocacy, and they reversed their decision. All told, we didn't spend very much money on this, right? A broad coalition. So the ROI potential is very large, and I want to put us in 2025 times. Right, this is 2021, 2025. The stakes are also very high. That if we don't engage, there's just as much money, to be honest, being proposed at the moment to be cut from federal programs that would impact Florida greatly. FPI will have more on that, so that if you're interested in different types of programs, SNAP, summer hunger, Medicaid, climate resilience, lots of very large programs, especially things like in the health sector. But just as ROI for additional funding is ROI on retention of our programs on the line as well. So this is the ROI spiel that I have for everyone, just to remember that if you need to engage in this space with people who are not bought on to policy, I very rarely say politics, okay, and because it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about nonprofit policy, advocacy, and yes, lobbying, but not actually politics and electoral, because that's something that C3s cannot do. If you want to learn more about that, you should go to Boulder Advocacy's resources. They have fabulous resources today. All right, but it's time for like a little quiz here. So I want to take this opportunity to look at this example. So this really happened, right? Kids really got $1 billion of food. That was actually 3 years, because we convinced him to do it 1 year, and then he did it then for the 3 years of that program. Now it's actually summer. It's called summer EBT, and we have yet to opt in for 24. We didn't opt in for 24. There's only like 0.5% of a chance that they would do 25. There's a coalition of groups working to try to get the legislature to include it for 26. And so, and if you're interested in that, please join the Safety Net Advocacy Coalition and reach out to me to join the broader coalition working on this. However, there's something really interesting about this opportunity, which is that this is an example of something called administrative advocacy. All right, administrative advocacy is really important in states like Florida, especially, where often it's engaging with administrative agencies and or just broadly the media and others to say, hey, there's this really important program that the state should opt into, or they should be administering better in a certain way. And FPI, and there's a lot of other partners who do a lot of this administrative advocacy in Florida. Importantly, administrative advocacy, when you're talking to an agency about implementing or opting into current law, that does not count towards your lobby limit. All right, so you can do this all day long. Private foundations can also do this. Other groups who are more limited as to their ability to lobby. So this is like a freebie, and everyone should be doing administrative advocacy in my mind, because it doesn't even count towards your lobby limit. So that's another interesting fact, that everyone should be like sort of building muscles around that. But that includes your local folks as well, like local county commissions, things like implementing current laws, or opting into a program federally, or how they are implementing it or engaging with people. There's a lot that people think is lobbying, and it doesn't actually need the definition. So we could be doing lots more of this. I'm gonna stop there really quick. Were there any? Okay, cool.
There are a couple of questions if you're looking to take questions, Holly.
Yeah, sure. Let's just take a break here for a second.
Sure. So one of the questions is, does the Child Wellbeing Index break down by subgroups?
So we have, there's a ton of information by disaggregated that we have as the Kids Count affiliate in Florida. And yeah, in the data book. So all of the Florida information that you'll see in there is actually FPI providing it to Manatee Foundation. Dr. Noreen Dollard on our team is the director of Kids Count. However, our Child Wellbeing Index, as far as I know, we probably have the data disaggregated by race and ethnicity and other subgroups, but we actually the information that we share publicly is just by county for children. So, and there's 16 different metrics, whether that's performance in education in different realms. This year we're actually focusing on hunger and leveraging some data on how counties are doing for child hunger, especially given the states yet to opt into this specific program, and that we're looking at what might the impacts be of cuts around child hunger. So, so we have that data, and if you're interested in something specific, we'd love to chat. But the Child Wellbeing Index looks more at a holistic look at the child population for county by county, and then ranking counties, which is it's always just a good talking point, right? Like, how are we faring comparing to other counties? But then, like, what are some things that we could be doing differently in these different realms? So, thanks for that question.
And then another question we received was, is there a list of different working coalitions listed on the Florida Policy Institute website?
That's a great question. So the Safety Net Advocacy Coalition is something that is housed out of FPI that we host it, but it's broad in terms of lots of faith-based orgs and other groups who focus on things like SNAP, TANF, WIC, also Medicaid, but there are other Medicaid coalitions. That's actually a great question. We don't have a current list of all of the different coalitions that we participate in. SNAC, we do have a website. I'll throw it in at the end. We have a landing page on our website for SNAC. If there is a specific kind of area that you're interested in, we probably know who's doing something about it. Because we have an analyst and probably in many different policy areas in Florida, and we pretty much know different coalitions, but we don't have a list at the moment. But please feel free to reach out to me if you have a specific question. It's a great question though, and a great idea.
That's all we have so far.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's my ROI spiel. I think when you get people that might be hesitant about it, this is a really important point to make, right? Is that if not for nonprofit voices, there would be, in this specific example, $1 billion less, but there's so many different examples in our state about how life is so much better because of the voices of all of you and the nonprofits taking that opportunity and using the tools in their toolbox in order to lobby and to add. All right, so I'm going to go through just a few ideas and throw these out that's often what you'll see is nonprofits and foundations or funders that they can sometimes take a discrete idea about policy where it's just one issue or a very specific area. Maybe they do most stuff behind the scenes. Others might be more vocal and public about engagement. There's all different sorts of lanes and roles that your organization can play, and it does not mean that one is better than the other. So these are just ideas just to throw out there to get the brainstorming moving and to thinking about how your organization or coalition of organizations can start to move and to think through this process. So first thing, power mapping. Power mapping is something that you all do anyways, to be honest, and you're already good at it. So I want to emphasize that nonprofits are good at this. They have the skill sets for policy advocacy already. You talk to donors, you talk to individuals, you share your mission, you steward relationships. These are all key skill sets for being a good advocate in the public policy sphere. And you're already good at it. You already do power mapping. You already think about if you're applying for a grant, you think about the foundation, maybe you think about the relationships there. If you think about a donor, you think about engaging with them over time or building a relationship. Even individuals in your list, right? If you're developing individual donor program, maybe small donor program, you're already talking to individuals in your community, right? Adding this facet of your work it's not all brand new muscles. You guys are already good at a lot of this. So I just want to reiterate that sometimes you'll see a nonprofit go, oh, we're going to do public policy. We're going to hire this one person and they're going to do it over there. And then we don't have to worry about it at all. No one else is going to do anything about it. That person's going to do it. And that person could be a lobbyist. It could be an internal lobbyist maybe, and they kind of check the box. And if you're not leveraging all of these assets that you already have, all of these skill sets within your organization, to kind of think of just layering this in as another target, right? You already target donors, you already target community members to get involved. Maybe you have volunteers. I mean, volunteer management, the hardest thing in the world, right? It's all relationships. So just from this slide, really the one thing I want people to realize is that, no, we already do this as nonprofits. You already do the work, talking to a legislator, talking to staff, talking to the community about the importance of childcare funding and why they should call. You can do that in the same instance that you're asking for a donation or that you're sharing about the time that you're building capacity for local childcare providers. And then we're also talking to our legislators about the importance of investing more. I'm just making this up. But that has a compelling development story as well, right? That there's ways to engage all of your staff and to have them think like, oh, I can develop buy-in for all of our staff for this, and to understand how it could be leveraged if you have a volunteer base, right? Especially work. So power mapping, just thinking about which message and which messenger for an individual legislator, or maybe someone on your board has a relationship, or maybe they're just a community member, or maybe there's a local community neighborhood that's in their constituency that they can reach out. But so that's a tool, but more than anything, you all are already good at so many of these tactics and muscles and the needs to steward relationships, that it shouldn't be scary. It's just extending that a little bit. So staff and leadership, some nonprofits assign an individual to oversee policy work, and others have many staff engaged as needed for their objectives. So it looks different by organization. And if you're small and you're like, look, I'm the executive director, this would be me, and sounds scary and something that I don't have time for. Completely understandable. Coming at this as just kind of adding them to another stakeholder that you need to engage. That's it. You need to engage stakeholders, whether that be your community members, your other coalition partners. And you probably already do this in any event. And so many groups that I've talked to, like, we don't lobby, but we did go and speak at the county commission for this money for affordable housing or something, and that's lobbying, technically. And however you want to talk about it or whatever makes sense for you, just starting and layering it into your current work. On the board, it really depends on board. I've worked with boards as an organization that have had many different makeups in terms of their support or engagement around policy. So sometimes it's like taking little steps and to say, okay, so what is our goal and how might this one very discrete policy change impact that goal? And then kind of go from there, depending on your needs. So lobbyists is something I also want to take kind of away. If there's a connotation around the word lobbyist, I'm gonna say that. We have lobbyists. I actually really love our lobbyist. I think he's fabulous, and we've had him since 2018 for about 6 years. So lobbyist is something that a lot of big organizations or even coalitions or even we're a medium-sized nonprofit, and we have a lobbyist. Doesn't break the bank, but it's super helpful. And I think being honest with each other about sort of all of the tools at our disposal, and it's just another voice and support for you. So if you have room in your budget, if you have room in that lobby cap, that each election lobby cap, but you don't have staff, it's essentially just a consultant that helps to support the public policy for you. And we all know consultants and how you can kind of like expand your capacity without having an ongoing expense. Same with lobbyists. It could be on just one issue. It could be short term. It could be, you could build it into a longer term relationship with a lobbyist. I think being more honest about lobbyists and who has a lobbyist and how everyone pieces those relationships together is really important. I would say, so if you all participate in like the Florida Nonprofit Alliance, I know, for example, on the funder end, the Florida Philanthropic Network, that they have a lobbyist. And so there's these associations that also have lobbyists that they may be able to at least give you some insight or be part of those conversations with them. If you pay dues and they're using your dues to pay for lobbyists, use the lobbyist, please. Another really interesting and a model that I love that we've seen in states like North Carolina, there's a child well-being coalition there where it's filled with smaller nonprofits, and they all pool their dollars to hire a lobbyist for the broader coalition. And you probably see that in some of our coalitions, but just because you're small, or if you don't have the HCAP or the capacity, it doesn't mean that you could be part of something broader. And I do encourage funders to kind of think of it in this vein as well, right? Foundations often have a much larger cap and the capacity to say, there's an organization, how do we share our lobbyists? And to invest and be creative. Really quick before I talk about the what a little bit. If you are lobbying for your very existence, all right, if you are saying, I need to exist, let's say there was a scary policy proposal over the last couple months federally around that seemed to open a loophole that could allow for any nonprofit to be shut down at any given time. And there were all these nonprofits federally who got together and pushed back on that successfully. that is a different case in terms of lobbying in your HCAP. And even private foundations can do that. The federal government essentially says that you can lobby for your existence, and that's a protected kind of activity. Those are things that your associations for nonprofits, both at the state and the federal level, should be very engaged in terms of, oh, what about the charitable deduction, or just our class and protection of what we're doing, and ensuring that we have, First Amendment rights and all the rights that you all have under the Constitution. So that's a kind of a special class of lobbying, right? Everything else around impacting your mission is a little bit different and considered different. Okay, I won't spend too much time on this, but oftentimes, policy is just everything, and it's so overwhelming that you go, where would we even start? And if that's you, it might not be. You might know exactly what you want to do, or like the lane you want to be in. But a lot of folks feel sometimes it's overwhelming. And so in my experience for organizations, developing a process wherein there's input from your core constituencies, community, maybe you fund a study or something that informs some sort of coming together, a convening. Maybe it's if you're a grantor, maybe it's talking to grantees. If you're a coalition, maybe it's a coming together survey of your coalition in order to inform like a policy broad agenda, right? Whether it's a broad one that's similar like to what FPI has, and these are the buckets of areas that we work in. Excuse me. Or it can be an additionally a rolling policy specific agenda, which there are pros and cons to both. We have both. We have both a broad, we call our roadmap, so that as things pop up in those bucket areas, our board allows us to work on those things. We don't have to go to the board to say, hey, this thing popped up and we need to do something very timely on it. And so that gives us the flexibility to do that. And also the thumbs up from our board. It's even with Florida Policy Institute, it has been a journey with the board. Boards come up a lot, right? Of like, how do you create this journey and processes that make them feel very comfortable and understand why you're doing it, but then allow you the flexibility to be very timely. In public policy, sometimes you're going to need to be very timely in a response, right? So this is just, you could create sort of a thoughtful process, sort of this funnel for why you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes organizations don't do that. Sometimes they just give the executive director and leadership very broad strokes and then let them do what they need to do. But this is a tool that could be helpful. Okay, how? As in, what are tactics that make sense? There are lots of toolkits. We have a toolkit on our website. There's toolkits from like Boulder Advocacy and others, and we can share that out to you. FPI is actually working with Florida Philanthropic Network on some more information for folks. Don't want to overwhelm everybody because there's so many things that you could do. But the message that I want to give today is that it's not necessarily just the tactic. So an example could be an op-ed is a tactic. A tactic is meeting in person with your legislator and their staff. A tactic could be meeting with let's say you want to impact the federal conversation right now. Maybe it's meeting with your congressman's staff or inviting them to an event that you have, right? And then developing a relationship in their off time that they call recess. Congress comes home for recess every once in a while. And in February, I don't keep track as much as I should be, but I know they have some recess in February, but they should be home. But honestly, just making relationships with their district director too, inviting them to events. They're your elected officials. That is not advocacy to invite them to your stuff. All right. You have an event and a lunch, invite them, and that's purposeful so that you can go back to them when it's a timely issue. That does not have to be super public. Everybody doesn't have to know that you're doing that, but you could call them later and say, you came to our lunch. We depend on Medicaid for X program, and they're proposing to cut Medicaid by $2.4 trillion. And I just wanted to share what that would do here locally. Not only is that impactful, but like our constituents and your constituents deserve for you to do that, right? To convey the impact of a policy proposal. So the right tactics, right? So there's lots of different tactics, but message being the right person at the right time, strategically and legally, right? Who can do certain things. But maybe it's a board member, or maybe it is a community group. Who is the right messenger? You can draft things for folks. It could be your executive director. It could be an impacted individual within your orbit, and you do everything to set it up, but you let this other messenger be the messenger. In Florida, we do that all the time at FBI. There's lots of things that FBI does that probably folks don't know that we do. I have to say that, right? So, and that's just because sometimes FBI isn't the right voice. It's not the right messenger. Right. So lastly, for just things to remember about sort of tactics and what should we be doing, tailoring the message for your audience. If your message is this Medicaid cut is going to impact this community with our program in this way, just knowing, what does this lawmaker care about? Do they care more about mental health, or do they care about a specific constituency, or do they really only care about their very specific community? You can use some of their language. You can say the same thing, but use a few different words so that it lands correctly. You have to tailor your message for the audience. My point. Allow for long-term thinking. So with this, it's a process, right? This is allowing yourself lots of grace, and to say that a win can definitely just be that relationship. It could be creating a coalition who cares together on the same thing. It could be impacting the narrative, so that when people are talking about an issue here, people just know that when this happens, this is going to impact this community, right? If it were not for your voice, people wouldn't know that. So it doesn't always have to be, we did everything and all the things in 1 year. And I know that often there are lots of like project grants and grants from different funders. No one in the room, right? But like there are funders who say, hey, you guys have to do something in a year or 2 years, and we got to see some major changes, and it's overwhelming. But even just stepping back and saying, actually, building capacity within y'all and within your community, right? And creating the awareness and building capacity, that is the win. And the policy win is a secondary. That's how we view it at FBI. And so thinking in that manner, so that folks don't get just, it's difficult. This is difficult work that we're in. So shifting a little bit about what do you define as a win. And then, as when difficult decisions come up, if it's, should we do X publicly or not, or should we talk to this lawmaker and share this, hard truth and in a very respectful way and engage? Should we do that? And it's just circling back to